Hello, church family and friends. It's 2-Minute Tuesday. The congregation that I'm serving has been studying faith practices, behaviors that form us as believers. And as I've mentioned in previous weeks, some of these practices are prescriptive. That is, they're habits that we adopt in the pursuit of certain goals or results. We want to grow closer to Jesus. We want to become more like Jesus. And Christians throughout history have claimed that certain practices help us move toward those goals. It's a prescription. If you want your life to change in this way, adopt this practice. But there are also Christian habits that are descriptive. They are behavioral habits that people spontaneously adopt when the Holy Spirit takes up residence in their hearts. The book of Acts describes the habits of the very first Christians. Acts 2 verses 42 through 47 provides kind of a list or inventory of the defining habits of the early church, the first communities who had received the gift of the Holy Spirit. The fifth of the habits that's listed in this passage is corporate worship. In Acts 2 verses 46 through 47 we read, "They continued to meet together in the temple courts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people." For 2,000 years of church history, it's been almost unheard of for somebody to claim to be a Christian and not attend weekly worship. Although there have been acute periods of war or violent persecution or plague that have been known to temporarily disrupt public worship, the default for Christians is to gather weekly and worship in groups. In fact, it's often when life is hardest that people seem most drawn to the company of fellow Christians and most drawn to the regular rhythms of communal worship. Today, Christian congregations are multiplying and growing fastest where life is hard, in developing nations or in nations where Christians are persecuted. In other words, Christians who are under pressure are most likely to gather for worship regularly. And maybe that's why worship attendance is dramatically declining here in America. We have too many alternatives and too few imperatives. Worship is optional, and it's an option that feels less appealing on a Sunday morning than sleeping in or going for brunch or playing a round of golf. It's not for no reason that the Old Testament Psalms and New Testament letters are full of commands to gather and worship. God knows that unless we have a powerful reason to get up and gather with fellow believers, we will fill the time with something else. What if we stopped thinking of worship as optional? What if we took God at His word and simply submitted to His command to worship? What would happen if we embraced worship as a discipline? Well, actually, we know what would happen. A decade's worth of research has established that people who consistently worship in community are socially, mentally, and physically healthier than those who don't. And we know from church history that worshiping churches are growing churches. It is abundantly clear that when the Holy Spirit is at work in people's lives and at work in communities, people gather for worship.